I don't know that we're right now. I mean, reorganization. My experience is well, and I'm sure. Well, I mean, I don't.
No, I got it. I live in a pocket. You good? I think. If I turn around and look at you, it's only 13.
No,
Does Rick report to?
Yeah.
Okay, council, everyone here, 5 o'clock on November 20th. We'll call the study session to order, and our first order of business is a retirement. Steve, you have a employee retiring. Come on up. Rick Randall and his bride, Todd. Come on.
We got that covered.
Hey, Todd.
I mean, this is your first retirement. Okay. Yep. Well, always like to honor and recognize a retiree from our city. And this is one that spans 41 years. It says that's a long time. It is a long time. A little history. Hired July 1st of 76 in the engineering department as a survey crew lineman. But in 11 months, he went to wastewater, hired full-time. That was a part-time job. Sorry. Full-time wastewater shift worker. Later promoted to wastewater truck driver. In 98, promoted to wastewater biosolids crew leader. Currently, Rick is a key person in working with the biosolids dryer system at our new wastewater treatment facility. He made it to the new facility. And I remember touring that, and you going through the tour, and I know there was a lot of pride there as we went through that tour. So I'm very glad that after all these years, you got to see the new one. And the next paragraph I'm just going to read because it says it all. Rick holds a Class A operator certification through the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. This is the highest level certification in that field. 41 years of experience in the wastewater field is very impressive. But to enter a career at entry level, run an award-winning biosolids land application program, and now to be involved in bringing online the most advanced dryer system in the state of Missouri, is a monumental accomplishment. We thank you for that. So we've worked on many projects from floods, blizzards, and those probably meant extra hours. Oh, yeah, okay. The mechanical breakdowns, probably extra hours. So anyway, in visiting out with Rick, he was wondering about if this is the right decision. I think after 41 years, you've earned it. You've earned it. And in talking, I plan to travel a little, and I certainly recommend that. We say congratulations to you, and this is an appreciation and recognition of over 41 years of loyal and faithful service to the city of Cape Girardeau. presented this 20th day of November 2017 by the city of Cape Girardeau in honor of retirement of Richard Randall from service to Development Services and Public Works, 1976 to 2017, spanning 2 centuries. So we say congratulations and best wishes as we honor you and thank you for your years of service. And say that on behalf of all of you.
You don't want to hear any stories I got.
Well, that's good.
I told him I wasn't having a month of fairs. There's been a lot of good times, and a lot of teamwork, and a lot of good things over the years, Greg. Actually, with 41 years service, you got to be doing some things right. So thank you, Greg.
Yeah. And any words from you, Rick?
No, it's been a long time.
Been a long time. We
Started my life, so-
yeah, we say congratulations, best wishes, and Godspeed in your retirement.
Thank you.
Planning and zoning. Looks like tonight we're honored by having the presence of Scott McClanahan.
Thank you. Well, we had 13 items on our agenda last month, so that shows 12 here. I'm sorry. But, it was quite a bit, and we got through it in a pretty decent amount of time, so it wasn't too bad. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce a little bit on one item, and the rest of them I'll try to go straight through. So starting off with the SEMO Development piece of property at 3301 Hopper Road. It sits at the intersection. It is on the south side of where Ford & Sons is. They wanted to change it from an R1 single-family residential district to a C1 general commercial district, and we had no issues with that.
Okay.
Second item on our agenda was public hearing on request of Rhodes Properties to rezone property at the northwest corner of Mount Auburn and Kagi. Everybody's pretty familiar with it. It's a pretty large parcel there right on the intersection. It went from C1 to C2. We had no problem with that. I'm going to bounce on that one a little bit to item number 4, which was an exception for development code for parking lot landscaping requirements. There is one corner of that at the corner of Kagi and Mount Auburn that is already, I guess, under contract. I don't know whether it say that or not, but I don't know whether I'm speaking in turn right there. But anyway, the development of that piece of property would require some exception on the setbacks for the parking lot. For the most part, actually for the large part, most all of it falls in the requirements, but there are a couple of places in the way that it's sculpted that it did come past the minimums. The biggest thing we look at with that as a group is when you're sitting at the intersection, that there's nothing that blocks your view, so that when you pull back out into the street or you do make a right or a left turn, whatever, that you have nothing that obstructs the view of the driver. So we had no problem with any issues there. And most of the signage will be back at the corners. The other item on that, it also had a subdivision plat, record plat, and we approved that. So that's my bouncing. Public hearing for Robin Kazee at 135 Southwest End Boulevard to permit a bed and breakfast, R3, high density residential, and we had no issues with that. There's plenty of parking. The house actually sets up well for that, and she referred to as one of the sister houses. You all know it is. There's 3 in a row there. Dre Development needed an exception for development code on driveway standards for a new development on Seamers Drive across from the White Castles. The driveways are lined. It is a little close to the intersection, but Campster, I believe, is the name of the street, and it has very little traffic issues. Yeah, it is Campster. The the traffic flow there is not so great that, or even a right-hand turn out of that's going to be a problem. And I guess if people have to sit there very long, they'll learn to go the other way. But they did some ingenious things with their parking lot, and there really wasn't much of a much better way to do the driveway alignment on that particular parcel. The AB Commercial Properties subdivision record plat, and that's what we have from here. Subdivision plat at William for the car wash there behind, they just passed Walmart on top of the hill. That is being divided into two different plats. The piece is plenty big for what they want to develop there, so splitting that into two different pieces. Bartlett subdivision plat, it's along Sherwood and Brookwood. Those familiar with that neighborhood, that is a deeper lots on Brookwood. Several of those over the years went all the way through to Sherwood. One of them's been split before, at least one's been split before that I remember, maybe two. But this one is also being split off, so the Sherwood piece of property could be developed instead of just being a really deep yard.
And the other one fronts on Sherwood.
Pardon?
The other one fronts on
Yes,
Sherwood.
yeah, one fronts on Sherwood, one
Yeah.
fronts on Brookwood. Painter subdivision, it is, again, we have so much. It's along Ellis Street. It is just past Evangelical Church there along Ellis, just west of here. Two different lots being grouped into one for something he has planned there. Physicians Alliance, they have a new structure along Percy and Farrar, right at the intersection there. They built the dialysis center, I believe is what it is, on the lot away from the intersection. So they would ask to divide the lot nearest the intersection off into a separate parcel. And then Shadowwood Villas along Hopper and Hawthorne. Its address is in Shadowwood Lane. Subdivision plat for that. We dealt with that a couple of times with the lot lines there. And let's see, Williamsburg Drive, Williamsburg Estates, phase 4, which is the last phase. That's the one that was just recently reset, and
Yeah.
you all just recently looked at
Yeah.
that. So that's all of them.
Okay, council, several of those are on our ordinances this evening. Any questions of Mr. McClanahan? Anyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Starview Apartments proposed development. Welcome.
Thank you. We are talking about, Brad contacted us a couple months ago and said he was interested in doing something with Starview Trailer Park. I think you're familiar with that property right off Kings Highway. And typically, a developer doesn't reach out to the equity provider, but in this case, Brad called us. We heard that we had done many of these types of developments and asked us if we'd come down and work with him and help him. And so we've been in the process basically of making, looking at plans, trying to figure out what to do with this 21 acres. And we've taken a first phase, and basically we're trying to take that first phase, which consists of 6 acres and 40 units that will be situated in 3 buildings. All 3 buildings are 2-story. There's a 16-plex, 2 16-plex, and an 8-plex, making up the 40 units. The significance of this development, it's affordable housing, and it's not low-income housing. And I'm going to try to explain the difference. Low-income housing, because I've been doing this for 40 years, low-income housing typically is housing that has rental assistance, where the tenant isn't paying the rent, HUD or somebody else is paying the rent. These units are affordable in the fact that we request tax credits. If we're awarded those tax credits, we sell them. And from the equity of the sale of those tax credits, we basically finance, many times 90% of the cost of the development with equity, private equity. Berkshire Hathaway is a big buyer, as an example of those tax credits. Banks, life insurance companies, big corporations have been doing it for years. And that's our expertise. We work with the developer, line up the equity, sell the equity, bring the equity to the table right up front so it's there for construction. And then we build something that's very affordable. Because it's just like owning your home. You've got a lot of equity in it, you got a very small loan, your payments aren't large. Same situation here, just reversed. It's multifamily housing instead of single family. So lots of equity, little debt or no debt, and affordable rents. And the program that we're really specifically working under is called workforce housing. The significance of that is when I was with the agency, MHDC, I actually wrote this program. And the reason I did it is the mayor of Branson, Missouri called me and she said, basically, Pete, I need your help. And I said, what's that? And she says, I need housing for our workforce down here. I've got people living in condemned motels, they're living in cars, they're living in campgrounds, and we desperately need housing for our employees. And so I said, I'll do whatever I can. What I found was that many times they were just a little bit over income and they didn't qualify for the housing. So we literally set 10 of the 40 units aside for a higher income bracket, 80% of the median income. The balance is at 60% of median income. So we're going to serve people that are making anywhere from $30,000 to as high as $45,000 a year. They work in your community, they live in your community, they need help. Those are the folks that I love helping. People that are in the workforce working hard. Obviously, we're all strapped. They're certainly strapped. They just need a little help, and that affordable rent helps them tremendously. So that's kind of our story in the background. You've seen the proposing zoning. I think you've already voted on that one.
Yeah.
Voted on it again. Our thing tonight is we're asking for a resolution of support. And you would think, obviously, ask the obvious question, why? This is all about competition, and we're trying to make this application look as good as the application from down the road, so to speak. And it almost is more than the developers competing. It becomes a community competing with other communities across the state. MHDC will receive approximately 120 applications. They'll fund 30. With your resolution of support and showing the need in your community, it's a great community. We know that. We know there's a need here. But your resolution of support will really help us with our application and help us hopefully get funded. Down and dirty, that's kind of our story.
Okay. Council, questions of this?
I love the development. I've checked out, all your artist renditions. I mean, that's going to be a great improvement to that neighborhood. And I know the competition is intense for those tax credits. So I'm assuming you're competing with similar projects all over the state of Missouri.
We absolutely are. There will be 110 applications and they'll only fund 30 of them, and ours has got to be as good as the next guy, is actually better. And that resolution of support is so critical to our application. We know how to do the rest. At least I've got Brad convinced of that.
Well, yeah, and I'll
if we get this
echo-
resolution of support, we're on our way.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It's going to be a great improvement. We want that done because it's going to be a great improvement to the area. And we thank Brad for stepping forward and doing that. Also, we have a need for quality workforce housing. And if we can capture that in our community through your development, that's a great asset to us. So be very supportive and would personally direct that resolution be forthcoming.
I agree.
Other council? Okay,
All right, thank you.
on the way. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I was throwing stuff on the floor, that's what I'm doing here. Sorry about that.
Better than throwing it at us. Thanks for being here. Last month, we had a update and a report from Chief Wes Blair on our police department and public safety, and we've asked him to come back this evening, a month later, with an update. So Wes, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I just kind of want to give you a little update. I know one of the things that was asked for was kind of the police department strategy for addressing specifically violent crime in our community. And relative to that, I think you'll remember our conversation was especially firearm crime was up substantially. Right now, just as of this weekend, the latest numbers I ran over the weekend, I had my crime analyst run over the weekend, were year to date, we're up 68% on firearm related crimes, whether they be robberies or assaults. And so that's concerning. So we need to find some ways to address that. And so I just want to kind of brief you on a couple of initiatives that we have been doing or are going forward with. One is increased cooperation with our federal prosecutors. There's a, so to speak, a new sheriff in town in St. Louis that's the U.S. attorney. Gentleman by the name of Jeff Jensen. I and the police chiefs with Poplar Bluff, Sykeston, Jackson, and Charleston met with him actually about an hour and a half ago, and talked about we need their assistance with getting people that are felons that are in possession of firearms enhanced charges, getting them off the street and getting them into the federal system, because honestly, people are a little more afraid of the federal system than they are the state system. It's got a little bit more teeth to it. So if you're a felon carrying a gun, you've already committed a violent crime with a gun, and then you're out on the streets and you're carrying a gun again, the federal government can actually do more as far as the incarceration piece and getting those dangerous people off the street than what we can see at the state and local levels. And he committed that one of his top priorities, not just in St. Louis, but also down in our area, is violent crime. And it was very, very much on board with assisting us with getting some of these people off the street.
That's good news.
And we've already seen a little bit of that just in the last couple of months, where they've taken some gun cases from us that they're working through the system. The downside of the federal system, sometimes it moves a little bit slower than what our state system does. We can usually get them processed a little bit quicker. But sometimes there's some benefit to it being slow and methodical and getting people off the streets, long term. So very encouraged by that conversation with him, that we're going to be getting some of that assistance to help us get some of those people off the streets. And then we'll also be sending more cases that direction as a result of that too. One of the other things is, once we kind of started looking at rental properties in town, I was actually a little bit taken aback that we have over 7,000 rental units within the city of Cape Girardeau, and that's substantial. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about is having that police landlord connection and kind of increasing that and making that a better connection. So to that end, we are reassigning an officer to be a housing officer specifically. That will take place shortly after the first of the year. We're doing some shuffling around to make that happen. We've already selected this person who's going to be doing it. As I can proudly announce today, because we've gotten all those ducks in a line, is that it's the person who actually developed our landlord communication in the past, was Corporal Couch. He actually, when he heard we were talking about doing this, he came and volunteered and said, "I would love to do this." And I said, "Good, because you were the person I was going to make do it anyway." So it kind of worked out. And so with that, that's going to take a lot of burden off the patrol guys trying to track down who is the landlord of this property, where we've had this issue tonight. That's going to be one of his big focuses. He's going to be working with our crime analysts, looking at the data as it relates to rental property. One of the other things that we're going to do going forward, and we'll probably start this program up about June or July, once we've got the training in, is there's a national program called Crime-Free Rental Property Program. And basically it's a program where landlords can get certified and say that they're a crime-free property. And so we'll have somebody, Corporal Couch, will be trained in the mentoring of that program to landlords that are willing to participate in it. And basically it's teaching them a lot about, what crime prevention tips. There's a whole lot of crime prevention through environmental design pieces to it. And then once they've gone through that certification program, then they can claim that they're a crime-free property or part of this program, which I think will be a benefit to the landlords too, as they're trying to recruit, especially college students coming into our community looking for places to stay, that they can say, you know, we've gone through the certification process with the police department. We're a crime-free program. Corporal Couch is going to training on that in May. And so when he comes back, we'll get that program up and running and get rolling with that. And I think we'll see some pretty good benefits from that, because it'll also enhance that relationship between landlords and the police also, who will just be working that much closer with them, helping them get their properties safe. There's another program that I have been researching. It's called the Focused Deterrence Program. A lot of different cities are doing it on different levels. And basically, you know, we in the police world, we saturate areas looking for crime. And especially that's what our street crimes enforcement does. And there is some benefit to that, but there's some negativity to that too, because we're not necessarily targeting criminal people all the time like we should be. You know, we're saturating the area where we know there's a lot of crime, but we're not targeting specific people. So we're looking at this at a program, and it's still, while I'm being vague, is because it's still wildly under development. I mean, we're wanting to make it very Cape Girardeau specific, where we're identifying who our hot people are and really putting some pressure on them to, one, stop committing crime. That would be our ultimate goal, stop shooting people. And we're wanting to work with some of our social services people if they're willing to get help through social services to get out of that lifestyle. That would be awesome. That would be our first wish for them. But then also putting them on notice that, but if you decide that you do want to keep shooting people and keep committing these crimes, we're coming after you with everything we got. And that includes the federal government, which again goes back to the commitment we got from the federal government today. You know, and I think that our citizens that live in the high crime areas will be very supportive of this, because it's really targeting specific people that anecdotally, most everybody knows who they are anyway. And a lot of people are living in fear of them, and we'll be able to really kind of pinpoint them and put some pressure on them to get out of that lifestyle or suffer the consequences of that. As you know, that we've kind of enhanced our camera program. We're working with some local businesses to put cameras up, hoping to get more businesses on board with that we'll have access to. Just puts more eyes out on the street for us. So we're still kind of working through that with several businesses, trying to get that up and running. There's a convenience store chain right now that's working with us to put some on their properties. They'll kind of be our test program. I should have those up and running pretty soon. And then hopefully other businesses will see some benefit from that and jump on board with that. However, if they don't want to actually put the cameras up, or they already have cameras, we have been doing a security camera registration program, and we continue to encourage both residents and companies that if you have security cameras already, let us know. You can register them with us. And then if we have a crime that's in that specific area, we've got a list that we can go to right then and say, hey, we know these places have cameras. Maybe they've got this incident on video. As opposed to the old school way, I remember when I was a detective, the way we figured out who had cameras was we walked up and down the streets looking up and out in the eaves of houses and trying to figure out who had cameras. But if people have registered those with us, that saves us a lot of time. Then we can get those cameras, that video a lot quicker. Many of y'all saw, I think actually Mark covered it in the paper not too long ago, that we are opening a storefront in South Cape in conjunction with the opening of our new station. I've promised the person where we're putting that storefront that we won't release who exactly where that is yet until the plans have actually been submitted to the city. But it's going to be a very strategically located place. And so you'll see some more of that coming in the future as to where that is. But that'll give people that maybe feel like we're disconnecting from the southern part of town because we're moving to the other side, that there'll still be a brick and mortar structure that they can come to and feel like they have that police connection without a car necessarily coming to their house. With that, we are still going to continue our street crimes programs. They'll be a little bit more laser focused than what we've seen in the past, but we are going to still continue those. Again, I met with all the local chiefs a couple of weeks ago, and they were all committed to, yeah, we really need to do this because we're having the same issues. I'm sure y'all probably saw over the weekend there was a homicide in Charleston. Well, I'm sure it doesn't shock anybody, but there's a Cape Girardeau connection to that as well. There's always, no matter which one of our cities we have an incident like that, there's always a connection to one of the other cities. So we recognize that we need to continue working together as one cohesive group to combat these. And because if I push them out of my city, they're just going to go to Charleston or Sykeston for a little bit, and then they're going to come back, and because they're going to push them back. And then the final thing is we do directed patrols. That's usually an overtime assignment for our officers, and it's very fluid. We can shift what we're directed patrolling. Usually around the holidays, we're really hitting the stores, hitting the parking lots in the stores, trying to knock down vehicle thefts and robberies or car thefts that might occur. But we also shift those to high crime areas, or there's sometimes we may just give them a list, a hot sheet of people that we're looking for that have warrants, and they may go do that. So it's a very fluid group, but the officers get a little bit of overtime doing it, and then because we just don't have the staffing resources to dedicate a unit to doing that hotspot type policing, but we are doing that on an overtime basis, and we'll continue to do that. And so kind of in a nutshell, that's it. Do you have any questions?
Council? Encouraged with what you're saying.
I think these are excellent, Wes. The information that we didn't cover was some of the issues that you've had with turnover. And I know from my seat on the bench, I'd be interested in hearing more from yourself and perhaps HR on how these types of issues can be resolved, because I think as a community, we cannot afford to basically pay to educate new officers and invest in them, and then they leave Cape Girardeau. And I know we can't stop all of them from leaving. I know money isn't the only thing that stops officers from leaving or causes them to leave, or either way. But I would like to hear more about that. I think the things that you brought up are quite excellent. Obviously, you already know that I feel the landlord piece is important, that communication. We know that not that many homeowners are going and shooting people or robbing them. So, our landlords, we can definitely point a finger at and say, why is it that we have criminals living in your property? Criminals living in your property. So those increased relationships, I think, are going to be. But retaining those officers, I think I told you I was in an accident in Paducah. The patrolman that arrived on his badge, it said he'd been an officer 23 years in Paducah. And I don't know if the rest of the council's aware that does not happen anymore in Cape Girardeau.
Seldom.
Yeah, and that's a shame. I mean, we just saw Public Works had someone retiring after 40 years. That's probably even an exception in Public Works, but it's for sure an exception at a police department.
And to your point, you're correct. It is a pretty costly endeavor to retrain. I think the average number that a new officer cost us, once you do the training, you equip them and buy them vests and all that, is roughly about $19,000 once they've gone through the entire training process, the field training and everything. Factoring in their training officers' time for the time that they're training them. So it is a real concern. It's a concern to have. Although you always want young, fresh ideas. I think I've mentioned this to this group before, that it's good to have those young, fresh officers on the street, because some of us are getting too old to chase people down. But you also need that experienced officer there that can also help you rein in the new guys, because the new guys want to chase everybody down because they're the new guys. That's what they want to do. And so it's good to have that balance. And you're right, we struggle to find that balance at times. Sadly, we're not an anomaly in that. Almost every conference I go to, about half of it is either talking about how you interact with millennials on your force, or how you retain officers or recruit and retain officers. And so we're always constantly looking for ways to make Cape Girardeau Police Department a desirable place to work. I think one of the biggest benefits we'll have is, honestly, the new building. I think there's something about the psychology of walking into a new, very professional, state-of-the-art facility and saying, yeah, you know what, I'm pretty proud of this place, as opposed to the facility that you walk into now where you're dodging the water as you're walking through. And so thank you all for helping make that happen. I think that will go a long, long way in our recruiting and retention. But I think there's some other things that we can do, and we can certainly have those conversations as well.
Yeah, and I think I agree, Joe, but I think really paying close attention and analyzing exit interviews as people leave and why. and really clustering those together, and paying attention to that.
And we have
Save some of that training, those training monies.
And we do interviews in every one. I believe I was just looking back. I believe I provided you a turnover report a few months ago.
Right.
But certainly we try to stay on top of it and work with each department head and certainly the chief to look for trends and also how do you recruit. And I know the chief was active in a recruiting video that he worked with
The CTC.
CTC on, and did a great job of that. And he's always engaged with SEMO and the academy. But you're right. It always costs when we invest in officers and then they leave. There's always going to be a certain amount of churn, but we don't want it to be just a revolving door.
And one of the things that we do with the academy is, I think probably half of the instructors over at SEMO's Police Academy are Cape Girardeau police officers. And that's a great recruiting thing. And that's where we get most of our officers from. And there are a couple of added benefits to that is because most of them are local. That's why they're going to the school there. So the more that we can recruit from that place, and you know, there was a time within the last year and a half that even SEMO's academy was concerned about the number of people that they're getting, just because it just didn't seem like there was a whole lot of people wanting to go into law enforcement lately. Can't imagine why. But even they have said that their numbers are starting to trend back upwards. This last academy that they just, I guess it starts in January, but they just finished recruiting for, I think they actually turned people away because they were full. And so that's an encouraging thing for us because then that's a larger pool that we can recruit from. And fortunately, since we're instructing there quite a bit, we have an advantage over some other agencies that might just come to a recruiting night and do some recruiting to them because it's our people in there teaching them the Cape Girardeau way. You know, I mentioned the Explorer program that we do. Although we won't see the benefits of that tomorrow, I think in the future, I think we're up to 15 Explorers now. And each one of them that say that they want to be a police officer later in their life when they're old enough, they all say, we want to work for Cape Girardeau. And hopefully that will continue with them as they mature and get older and actually become of the age that they can apply for us. And then we'll have a whole nother set of people that have been trained the Cape Girardeau way and that have that commitment to Cape Girardeau and want to be law enforcement in Cape Girardeau. So I see some positive trends on that. I don't think that we're there as quickly as I would like for us to be, but I think it's tracking that direction.
Well, I'd like to say I'm glad to hear that we're going to have a substation in Ward 2. And I wanted to know, is it going to be, will you be able to walk in or to just, you know?
Right. So it won't be staffed all the time,
Okay.
but there will be a mechanism there that you can call for the police if you need an officer to meet you there. And then the district officer will come and meet somebody at the substation. Now they'll do some of their reports there. They'll do some of their downtime there. But honestly, hopefully they don't do a whole lot of downtime there because I want them out patrolling the streets, not just sitting at a substation behind a desk. But yeah, so there will be the ability to get somebody there pretty quickly if they need them, but they won't be there totally 24/7.
Other council?
What's the status of our reserve program?
We do not have a reserve program.
It's over.
Yeah, we have part-time officers. It's become increasingly difficult to find people who want to do the reserve thing. A lot of it has to do with liability and benefits for them. And so we were down to 2 reserves and we switched them over to just part-time officers. And then if I'm paying you a little bit, I can pressure you to work a little bit more than I can if you're just doing it for free. So we've totally just disbanded the reserve thing.
What was the difference between the two?
The difference really between the two is a reserve officer volunteers and does it for free and they don't get paid. But they're also not entitled to a lot of state and federal line of duty death benefits. So should they have been hurt or injured in the line of duty because they were volunteers, we would not have been able to take care of them or their families should something have happened to them. And so we felt like, you know, if these guys are coming in and giving us this amount of time, it's really kind of small amount of money to pay them to do it part-time for us. And then also ensure that their families would be taken care of in the event of a tragic event happened to them on duty. So we switched that over to that for that reason.
And they still had to be post-certified?
And and that's the other thing too. They still, even as a volunteer, you still had to go through the 740 hours training to get your post certification and continue your continuing 24-hour of training each year. And finding people that would do that for free anymore is becoming increasingly more difficult. So.
If you remember, council, a few years ago, we, council in the budgeting process added $100,000 for part-time, both on, and overtime for police and fire. And that's been a source and a good source to pay some of those officers as well as some others.
And some of the benefit to that is I've had several officers that have retired that don't really go away. They still stay and work part-time. I've got one that just retired, that just left to go work his own business. And he said, I don't really want to totally leave though. Can I still come work on Thursdays and Friday nights? And I'm like, well, he wasn't even working Thursday and Friday nights in the position I had him in. And now that's our peak time, as you well know. So I'm like, well, yeah, I can't come up with a plausible reason not to use you like that. And so the benefit of doing that part-time thing is that you can retain some people that might leave to go do something else, but still want to be committed and be involved.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have adequate funding to do that as much as you want to?
Yes, I haven't been told no yet.
Okay, so you have more funding than you have people that want to do that.
Yes, on a part-time basis, yeah.
Okay. One question that had been asked when you had met before council about a month ago were, I guess, budgeting shortfalls, if you will. Are there resources that your department desperately needs that the council is not allocating?
I think the biggest thing that we desperately need, and Mr. Meyer and I have had these conversations, is a new CAD and records management system. And I know that we're working through trying to find the finances for that. I've tasked a committee of my officers to start looking at what is the best for us. So they've had vendors tromping in and out for the last couple of weeks. And honestly, even if you were to say tomorrow, you've got the money, go do it tomorrow, it's not something we would just rush right out and buy. I mean, we're talking $250,000 to maybe even a $500,000 investment that we want to be sure that we do our due diligence on and get the best product for us. But that in conjunction with our crime analysis analyst works much harder than he should have to right now because he's using a system that I think is probably worse than paper and carbon paper. It's just not a very user-friendly system, and it's outdated and is on the edge of not being supported even by the software company anymore. And so for him to extrapolate data from that is extremely time-consuming and difficult. Not so with much of the RMS systems, records management systems that are out there today. Most of those, it's pretty much a click of a button and you can create whatever type of reports you want to create. So we're looking at that. And that, if I were to say there's one thing that I really need more than anything, it's probably that going forward.
Okay. And you and I have talked about this before, and you discussed it at a previous council meeting. I mean, I really think that the council and the city manager are going to have to make this a priority. When we have firearm crimes increasing year over year of 70%, all I can say is at least that's down from 85% when you were here last month. But this is the most basic need that we provide as a society, is to keep people safe. And it's not just Chief Blair that does that, it's the fire department as well. And I understand, obviously, we need public works taking care of removing sewage and providing water, but our most basic needs for the city of Cape, in my opinion, are not being met when we have shootings every day and firearm crime is increasing at a level of 70 to 80% a year. That is totally unacceptable. And we're going to have to do something about it, because otherwise nobody's going to want to live here.
But on the other hand, I think we are doing something about it.
No, we are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
But we cannot.
It has to be top of mind awareness.
It has to be top of mind
Right.
awareness, and it has to be our highest priority.
Yep. Okay.
I don't think we're sitting idly by
Right.
while
Yeah.
criminals are running our
Yeah.
community. I think Wes is doing it. I mean, he's been explaining how he's doing a fantastic job dealing with these issues.
I don't think all these issues are gonna just immediately start in like this either, but I think you'll see a gradual decline.
And it's been increasing for about 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, that was presented to us, and it's gonna take a while to get it under control.
And we're not alone, and they move around.
Sure.
It's
Sometimes you have to arrest a
it's a
lot of
national
people
problem.
to have people stop.
I think that's why in the spring and next year, I would really like to see us, seems like the street crime task force. And I had a question, from a state or federal level, is there any way to get any help for funding to help to get those resources in communities?
At the state level, there's not really any grant or funding sources other than things that we're already tapping into, like our drug crime or drug task forces, things like that. At the federal level, we actually are getting some federal assistance. We've got 3 officers that are being funded by the federal government to do that. There are street crime funding opportunities available. Historically, those go to your Chicagos and your St. Louis's, who even per capita are seeing a higher level of crime than what we have. But I mean, we always keep our eyes open for whatever type of opportunities are out there that we can apply for.
I think one thing we really need to ask for is at least quarterly, have Wes at that podium.
Oh, y'all get
So we can
tired of
just
listening.
visit together about what's going on.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be formal.
No,
You know, just an update.
yeah, just an update where we're at quarterly, just put it on the agenda for yourself and for staff that quarterly, and if something pops in the meantime, you're at that podium at any time.
I'm here every council meeting.
Yep, you are. And council, and that's true. He's sitting over there. If you have a question or something, don't wait. Let's air it out. That's what these study sessions are for. Okay. Wes, thank you for all you do. And his staff, the rest of the staff and so forth in the community. And I see several people out in the audience that are and we're all really looking to do the same thing and get the same results. So we appreciate citizens' support and involvement in this issue also. One here to appear before the council on any item that is not on the agenda. Any item not on the agenda. Alicia?
Yes.
Always good to see you here.
We're standing here for SNAP. Before we get started, my name's Felice Robertson.
I'm Annette Patterson. I'm Carolyn Urban Mobley.
I'd like to give Chief and City of Cape the kudos. He has implemented, because of SNAP have requested about the violence in our city. The police department has instituted anonymous tip line, which has helped tremendously. The report we were given that 30 minutes of a day of a morning is taken out now, before that was done. The chief also has put in the neighborhood roll call. And when he comes into the community to understand the people and talk to the people and get that, bridge that gap. There was a gap before he came. People talking to one another, talking to the police because they didn't have that trust. So he instituted that as well. And there also is a internet where you can get on the neighborhood call. I think it's next door on the internet because of the chief. Listen, and so that has been instituted. So it's a time thing. But people are calling in. People are helping. People are being more agreeable and not being afraid. So they were afraid. And also with the newspaper on that, with the chief, people, names were coming up in the newspaper, so they were afraid to give the information to the police because they're going to put it on the newspaper. We talked to them about that as well. So those are some of the things that he has done and the police department is doing as well. So we want to let you know that, I mean, it takes everybody. And especially if you're gonna, when we find out that people are just afraid.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't talk. And that's why he's trying to bridge that gap. So my hat's off to the police department. We're here today because of what became a word of SNAP at our 4th Tuesday meetings. We meet every Tuesday, but on the 4th Tuesday, we meet at the Salvation Army. Well, some kids, school children from age 10 to 16, brought to our attention that when they get off the school bus, they are harassed daily by people loitering, drinking and loitering. And this is every day. We were told about it in August, and we did report it to the police. And we were sent to the school. We called the school. Then we were sent to the bus station, the bus department. Then we were sent back to the police. So we got some pictures of the loiterers we want to pass out to the council. The school children are afraid, and they even asked, can we hit them? That means they're really close to them. If they that close, they can hit them. They're close, and they're being harassed on a daily basis. Because we've called all these different places since August and nothing has happened, that's why we showed up here today, to make the council aware of it.
I'm gonna go this
What
way
can we
and then
do
we'll go
about
back.
the children who are terrified? Really, they're terrified. And so can we put a camera out? We did put Miss Carolyn, she went out and watched it. So that's how we got the pictures. And it seems like the guys are knowing that that's what time the school bus arrived, and that's when they come. Like they got it down pat. The school's gonna get out and we're gonna show up. So that's why we're here today, to make that, to address that for the children.
My first question to you, do you have specifics? And here they are. So thank you.
Okay.
Got not only addresses, but got pictures.
Yeah, we got pictures. So it's my concern, because the children really crying out. If they come into the right people, nobody's happening. We've been to the school board, we've been to the school, the police, SNAP.
Robinson said that they couldn't add the Salvation Army as a bus stop because there wasn't enough money, and it would go against the rule that children cannot be let off if it's not in relation to their residence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about 5 buses, isn't it? Yeah, 5 different buses. There's 5 buses that go past the Salvation Army, but only like 2 of them are allowed to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of our big concerns is that we know for a fact that at the Salvation Army, right in that area, there are a lot of sex offenders. I was gonna look for the number and I didn't have time today.
Yeah, that was a big concern too. They could, that they might be sex offenders.
So we know that there's an issue, but we don't know how to protect the children.
Right.
Bob, why don't you forward that over to Wes?
And one of the things that I would think that looking at those pictures, we need to be working with the businesses to make sure that they're not.
Well, we did call Tom Meyer. He owned that,
It was the house.
and he said
That he's been calling and reporting trespassing a lot.
Okay.
they can arrest them, but they'll come right back the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, once they've been arrested.
Keep with it.
Okay.
All right.
Before I sat down, I have an invite for the council, the mayor, and chief to a vigil for the Newtown National awareness of that tragedy of gun violence in Newtown will be held here in Cape at Christ Episcopal Church. You guys are invited Thursday, December the 14th, on the behalf of Moms Demand Action Against Gun Sense. And so we can bring a national awareness to this violence, and that's against kids as well.
What time on the 14th?
Thursday, December 14th, 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Mhm.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all for your continued vigilance and your dedication to be with us. I can remember back when we at Salvation Army, when we began the anonymous tip line. I've been giving them out over the months, and the back door slot, I still have a rubber band full of them. So. And they're working, and it does work. Not all the time, making progress. Thank you. Anyone else? Any item not on the agenda? Okay, agenda.
Okay, we have our invocation, and then we have two presentations tonight, 16 Days of Activism Against Gender Violence proclamation. Who we're going to have here to accept that? Okay. And then we'll have recognition of those involved with the South Cape cleanup. Mayor?
Yeah, I was looking to who, and I got the sheet from, that was all Ryan's. Don't have anybody that we know of for?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get that. Might be, Jessica might be here maybe. Don't know. That's fine. No, somebody will be here, I'm sure. Yeah, and I specifically asked Councilman Joe Zero to invite some people this evening for recognition for our hugely successful South Cape cleanup, and I would pass the information to Joe to comment on that, as he was the leader of that effort, and to lead the recognition in that. So, Joe, I don't know how many we have coming.
I mean, I pulled out everyone.
Yeah, so we'll see what we get. I also have some information here from over the weekend on numbers of hours and numbers of loads and so forth that at least those that want to, and Steve is still here from Public Works, and I know that was over and above, right, Steve? Over and above work, but it was handled. And to our staff that did that kind of on very short notice, to recognize the dedication to that and the difference that it's made with volunteers and with staff. So
I think we've got some pictures as well, Jessica.
Yes, there's.
Yeah.
That we'll have to be able to show. Okay,
A
great.
few pictures.
Okay, super.
Then we'll do communication and reports. Council, do you have items you'd like to report on?
Several from me. It looks like from the report, Julia isn't here, but we had another record spaghetti day.
Mm-hmm.
And so great to see all the parks boards and foundation people and spouses of them working lots of hours at Spaghetti Day. It's a huge event, and again, very successful. Chief West Blair, Councilwoman Shelley Moore, and I participated in the Thanksgiving prayer service at Shawnee a week ago on Sunday. Well attended, and I think, Shelley, a very successful event. So Shelley, you may want to comment on that too when it gets to your time. And I want to congratulate Zonchin Jessica Hill at the Zonta Club luncheon for her award. What great work she has done and is doing in the city of Cape Girardeau on domestic abuse. And then congratulations also to Mid-America for their award, their Burger King Award, part of our economy, local economy that have gotten national attention, and that's worth noting. And then highlight before our next meeting will be on December 1st, Chief. We'll be celebrating cutting the ribbon on Fire Station 4, and also running over to Fire Station 2 to observe and celebrate the improvements there. This is a big deal because this is the last of our antiquated, old, inadequate, whatever you want to say, fire stations. So we'll celebrate that on December 1st. That'll be before our next council meeting. So other council?
I'm going to mention at the regular meeting that it's the time for the annual Senior and Law Enforcement Together Senior Dinner, or actually a get-together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at the Eagles Club from 3 to 5 on December the 7th.
Okay. Others? Okay. Staff?
Don't think we've got anything.
Okay.
Well, appearances in the consent agenda, we have the second and third readings of the permanent water line easement at Heritage Park condominiums. We have the second and third of the air traffic control grant, the second and third of the zoning change, North Kings Highway from, this is the Starview zoning change. Then the zoning procedure change with C1, allowing car lots. And then number 6 is a resolution adopting the downtown strategic plan that you saw last time. Number 7 is the resolution support that the Starview folks talked about earlier. Number 8 will be an L&I agreement for banners out at Cape Central public schools. Number 9 is the resolution approving the pledge of security agreement. This is an agreement that the Mowers at the Marriott Marquette development, that TIF development is getting some additional financing. And in that financing, Central Bank of Kansas City is asked to give an additional 30 days of remedy time. And bond counsel has recommended that we allow that to happen. So this allows us to happen through resolution. Number 10 is the final payment for the Independence and Gordonville Roundabout. 11 is the final payment for Fire Station 1 interior renovations. And then 12 is the assignment of a special use permit from the Greaves to the Reeses. Are there any items you'd like to remove from consent agenda or note your abstention? If not, then we have new ordinances. We have a couple of record plats you heard of earlier for the Bartlett and the Rhodes Mount Auburn subdivisions. That's 13 and 14. 15 is the re-subdivision at the Physicians Alliance subdivision that was spoke about earlier. 16 is a municipal agreement for Kings Highway for the Missouri Highway Transportation Commission. This is a resurfacing of that roadway. It's good timing. It's showing its age and needs to happen. So that will be a nice improvement that will happen next year. And then we have a record plat for the Painter subdivision that they spoke of earlier. And then we are accepting some permanent easements for Rock Gardens, Dutch Myers property, and for Little Mac East, which is also a property out in the same area off of LaSalle. Those easements, they're accepting those. Are there any of the new ordinances you'd like to discuss further or abstain from? Robbie?
I'm sorry.
14?
Yeah, 14.
Sorry. And then we have an appointment to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I believe you have ballots.
Ballots are there in front of you, Council, and as you'll remember, we appointed R3 back in January 9th. And the one appointment, two of them were Joel Nykirk through 2019 and Scott Meyer through December of 2018. And then Quintella Noto was appointed for the balance of this year. That is coming due December 1st, and that's what's before you now. So it would be a reappointment of Quintella, and so you see the others that are interested in that. So any discussion there? Okay. Any other items, Council, that you want to visit with before we dismiss from our, okay? We do have a closed session for legal action, litigation, confidential communication with our legal counsel, property transactions pursuant to revised statute 610-021, 1 and 2. If I could have a motion. Gunn. Seconded by Azura. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we'll adjourn and reconvene at 7 p.m.